could be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. It's a quote from Maya Angelou, and it's very appropriate today. It takes confidence to step out of your comfort zone. And one of the things that I believe helps is meeting others, listening to their stories, and hearing how they've done it or how they're evolving, bit by bit, moving forward. In my book, I share several stories of people who have done just that. But today I'd like to introduce you to Sharron Keogh, who I've only just recently met. Hello, Sharron.
Hi, Kerryn. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Sharron is a resilience and women's wellness expert. She climbed the corporate ladder all the way to National Manager of Health and Safety. She learned that what they don't tell you is that you can lose yourself, your health, time, relationships, and goals. And often we put ourselves on the to-do list, and our quality of life is worse off. We only recently connected at an online networking event, which has been one of the highlights of COVID that I would never have thought could happen. We had several conversations, and I was impressed how she's pushed through and made several changes in her life over the last 20 months. And I thought that this story and our conversation might help people just like you who are finding this extremely challenging times. Sharron, could you share a bit about your corporate position and what life was like for you at that period of time?
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned earlier, I was at the peak of my corporate career. I was a national health and safety manager. So I would pretty much travel most months, if not multiple times a month. So I was constantly on the go. I would find it really difficult to, I guess, commit always to things in my personal life because I might have to travel. And therefore I found that my fitness routines would be thrown up in the air. Your diet, whilst even though I would try and eat as healthy as possible, sometimes that's not always possible when you're going out and you're not living your normal and eating at your normal routines. So it really disturbed, I guess, a whole range of areas in my personal life as well as my professional life. And even though I've worked for lots of male-dominated industries, I think it was just, it became particularly challenging trying to fit into environments where I just didn't feel like they were either my people and that they got me, or that I was just trying to toe the corporate line. And there was a lack of self-expression, I guess, to be able to, really put my views out there as well as being heard.
Mm. And then, of course, along came COVID, and life for everybody turned upside down. Hopefully, we're getting into a bit more of a normal time. But what challenges did that bring about for you?
Quite a lot, as we previously talked about. So at the beginning of March, I found out my role was being made redundant, which I saw as actually an unfair dismissal. So I was going through that throughout the month of March, which extended beyond that for the months that followed. We also found out that my husband was being made redundant as well. So we went from a 2-income family to a 0-income family came April. We were also dealing with our second miscarriage in 6 months. So, and that last miscarriage around that time actually resulted in me having 2 surgeries and being faced with a third, if not more, which I healed myself naturally, thankfully. We also moved house the first week of April as well. So not only,
my goodness, could it get more complicated?
Yeah. I don't do things small, so you may as well whack them all together. And then obviously the pandemic, we were in lockdown by the end of March here in Sydney. And then, as I was trying to find a new role, people had stopped employing because things were just so uncertain. Everything was put on recruitment freezes. So not only were we out of work, but then we couldn't find another job as well. And for the first time in my life, faced with having to go on to Centrelink payments that I never had ever considered in my life before.
Mm. So how long did it take you to step forward, or what was going through your head at that time? It must have been so confusing and wondering what was the right way forward, and even having the strength or the energy to think about it must have been such a challenge for you. So how did you decide your next steps?
Well, I mean, thankfully, I've done a lot of work on myself over the years. So I've got a lot of tools in my tool belt that when these things come up, I've got a lot of things that I can draw on to help move me through it powerfully. And they really came into play throughout last year. So, I mean, for the first time in my life, I'm quite a type A personality. I'm often doing something, even on a weekend as well, even on a holiday. So I'm often doing something. And so for the first time in my life, there was nothing for me to do, which was actually a blessing, because I really got to really learn the power of creating space in your life. And again, we were just talking about that earlier. There was nothing for me to do. I couldn't leave the house because we were in lockdown. I didn't have any work, so I didn't have to work. We just moved house. So kind of the biggest thing for me to do was just to unpack. And, I didn't feel the pressure to go and do that immediately. I was also dealing with a lot of stress with the miscarriage and the surgeries and all of those things. So, I just took one step at a time. What was the biggest priority? And, when there were things that I thought, oh, okay, maybe I can do something, or what do I want to do? I was like, oh, I've started my women's circle training. I haven't completed that yet. Now I've got the time to do that. I'll go and complete that. And a nutrition course came up to study. I didn't want to ever become a nutritionist, but I just love health and wellness. So I was like, okay, I'll start studying that. So just different things that I either started, I got a chance to complete, or just the opportunity to start to explore, well, what is it that I want to be doing? Do I want to go back into corporate, earning a good income, but ultimately, no, I probably won't be happy again after 6 months? Or is this maybe a sign from the universe to follow my passion? So having that time really just allowed me to start getting present to connecting back into myself. And I guess for those, my feminine side, which had gone a lot through working in corporate, being in such a, strategic role, very masculine energy, having, to communicate myself and taking a stand for myself a lot throughout that time, that it was the first time in really coming back into that feminine. So that's really what I did at that time, and just kind of kept taking one step forward. There were definitely emotions that came up during that time, and I just allowed myself to express those and release them from my body. So
I think it was definitely a regrouping time. And I know personally with the space, I mean, my podcast started last year during COVID, and I created an online course and things that I'd been thinking about but just hadn't had that time. So I can understand, and I agree with you that I perhaps didn't stand back as much, but I'm also perhaps in a different stage of life, and was very had always worked from home anyway. So in some ways there wasn't a great change, but there was the change to be able to expand myself and to grow further by connecting with more people online, which, as I said, I never thought was possible to network online. And now I think it's the way to go, because we would never have met. And so I've met so many more people that way. So what direction is your thoughts and business going now? What have you been working on? And I know it's still early days for you, but I think that's still a very valuable conversation, because everybody who goes into business has somewhere to start, and the challenges that come up are common to everybody, and it's good to know that you're not alone when you are faced with them. So how are you feeling at this point in time?
Yeah, look, I'm feeling really excited. And I guess, that space that I got really present to, the importance of last year, has really come up again this year, which is where the business has started to evolve again. So when I started my business last year, it was really heavily reliant upon seeing people face to face. I'm sure you were in the same boat as well.
Yeah.
And I guess this year, for me, it's really highlighted the gap in my business. So when I say that, I was doing lots of, I completely reskilled last year after I left corporate and started my business. I was doing self-care treatments, such as raindrop technique and hot stone massages, chakra energy balancing work, women's circles, and I have an essential oils business as well. And a lot of that was face-to-face with clients. And having this year gone through again another lockdown, it started to have me reflect again, okay, well, having that space to say, okay, well, I can't see my clients face-to-face. This isn't a good business model for myself. That the moment I can't see my clients, I can't generate an income. I need my business to be more adaptable to deal with potential lockdowns at a snap of a finger. So I really started to reflect on, well, what is it that I'm good at? What are people dealing with right now? And how can I help them? And when I started connecting with that, I realized from everything that I've dealt with last year, and that's just one piece of my story. If people know a little bit about me or follow me online, you'll kind of learn that I've dealt with a lot of other stuff, as I'm sure everyone has over the years. But I really got present to the fact that I've got a level of resilience that most other people don't have. And some of it is innate to me, I guess. But a lot of it, to be honest, has been just learned over the years. And I thought, well, people need resilience.
Absolutely. Can't agree more. Yeah.
I haven't learned anything for the last 2 years. We're constantly going through change. And I think the change being asked of people today is so much more than we ever have had. And how we deal with that change comes down to our level of resilience.
Yes.
And so I'm really passionate about helping to teach people how to be more resilient. And when you have that skill, you can take that in so many areas of your life. And so I really want to be able to teach people, if you can be resilient in your personal life, you're going to be resilient in your professional life, and vice versa as well. It just helps you in so many ways. And I think the other thing when it comes to resilience, a lot of people who are still recovering from last year, when they've been faced again with lockdowns again this year, if you didn't recover and have tools to recover from last year, you're still dealing with the aftermath of last year.
Absolutely.
And then
yes.
you've got another big challenge. And that's not even taking into account what impacts that have been for people in terms of their finances, their businesses, their profession, their way in which they live their lives day to day. So there's so many factors that has been in play over the last 2 years. And it's about how do you, I hate to say, but pick yourself up and keep moving forward. I like to say how you move through things with power and velocity.
Yes.
You want to be powerful, but move through it as quickly as you can.
That's right. And that can take, as I said at the beginning, it's also a level of confidence that you can get through it. I think there's a lot of things similarities between confidence and resilience, and taking that sort of, having that courage to step forward is just really important. And I know as a parent, but also as a teacher, I used to just feel that children need to be brought up to be resilient too, because they're going to face things throughout their life, and if we don't equip them to be resilient, then we end up with adults who perhaps are lacking it as well.
And I think that comes also down to the fact that kids observe what their parents are doing or the adults around them are doing. So if they see you struggling, they think that that's normal and that's okay. And that's what they'll start to learn and adopt and carry through their adult lives. So, it all really starts with us modeling the behavior that we want to see in our children as well.
Yep, for sure. For sure. So what are 3 lessons that you've learned so far on your journey from moving from corporate to your own business?
Following your passion. I wanted to do something like this for so long, but I never had the courage at that point to do anything. I thought I had to have certain things lined up before I did it. So I'm grateful for the experience of it pushing me out of my comfort zone and having me do it. I just wish I would have been courageous enough to do it earlier. So following your passion, creating space, I've never really got the power of how much creating space, taking care for yourself, how much that can really be so expansive in so many other areas of your life. What's the third one? I think just a trusting and knowing in yourself that, and that confidence that you were mentioning, that you can do it. Like, it might not look perfect, it might not go exactly how we plan it to be, but just trusting within yourself and trusting that the universe has your back, that you can do it.
One of my favorite books is Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers. And the bit that always sticks in my mind is that you'll always learn something about yourself and others from whatever situation you find yourself in. And I often I refer to that a lot myself. And I think, well, what's the very worst thing that can happen? And in most cases, there's really only one bad thing that can happen. So why not give it a go and see what the good comes out of it? And I think that's, you know, one of my guiding stars. So at the moment, your vision is wide and you're sort of going to narrow it, but there is a core. So what's the core of your vision?
Yeah, look, I guess for me, I guess I've become quite passionate about supporting women. And there was something that I guess I always shied a little bit away from. And potentially that was because I never really had a strong base around me of support from women as well. And I guess, you know, working within so many male-dominated industries, it just makes me so upset that we don't have more women in leadership roles. Or even, you know, I've declared this to other people and situations before, you know, people like Tony Robbins, who speaks on global stages. There are all these men who are at that level. I'm like, where are all the women?
Yes.
There's Mel Robbins and there's
Brené
Brown and some people like that we know of. But then we get to a point where like, oh, but you can keep rattling off the list of men. I'm like, damn it, I'm going to be the female version of Tony Robbins. So whether or not that continues to be something that I want to do, but I want to raise and elevate the amount of women that we have who are standing in their power and achieving what they're here to do. Because I think the difference between men and women is women are really more community focused in the way that they approach business and the way that they do life. And when you raise one woman, you're really raising a whole community of people around you. So I've really started to work a lot more closer with women. I don't discriminate. I will work with anyone, but I do find that my passion is starting to be more drawn to women and helping them to grow and elevate themselves. I guess also within that, it's about finding that balance between that masculine and feminine energy. I think with how society has progressed over the last number of decades, women have been pulled more into their masculine energy and away from their feminine. And I think men from a traditional background have not had as much of a balance of the feminine energy. So I think it's about bringing those two back into a bit more harmony, because life has completely changed. There are so many other factors that go on these days. And at the heart of it as well is, I want people to have tools and techniques to support them, that when they deal with those challenging times, that they have things that they can lean on that are going to move them forward in their lives.
Absolutely. And I come from a place where I want men and women to communicate better. And the events that I run, which were live and are now online and live, bring men and women together. And I see it as a room of humans, because everyone has their own perspectives and their own knowledge and experience. And each can teach the other gender or somebody else in that room so much wisdom from their experience. And so we encourage, women are very, very good at building relationships, and men can learn a bit more from women about how to do that nurturing and to have more open conversations and share. And men, from a perspective, can also help women sort of understand that it's okay to ask for the business and to take a more direct approach. So from my perspective, it's very much about having the confidence and stepping out and being prepared. And I think if we, by being sort of having opportunities to talk on different levels with men and women in the one space, is valuable. So if you were to come to a YTM event during lockdown last year, I created a game called Conversations Count. And one of the cards that comes in the section about vision and courage might be dealt to you. And the question is, if you took one photograph to depict your life right now, what would it be? Sometimes when these questions are asked, someone goes, oh, I'm glad they didn't ask me that. But it's a thought-provoking one.
Oh, look, I almost feel like the photo would have two aspects to it. So one, I'm kind of seeing this image of like this rope or this chain kind of almost coming over a cliff to kind of depict the struggle and the toughness and how everything hasn't flowed previously. And then on the other half of the picture, or maybe even at the top of that cliff, is this woman with her hair flowing in the wind. And it's just a depiction of it used to be tough and hard and a struggle and things didn't come easy. But now there's this beautiful woman there with ease and flow, with the wind going in her hair, just saying, yeah, life can be easy and it can flow.
That's a fabulous photo. I can see it. And a phrase comes to mind that I used to say to my children all the time is, anything worth having's hard before it gets easy.
I think you need the duality to appreciate, but it's also knowing that you don't have to always have it so hard and tough. You learn from those experiences, and through having a really strong mindset, through doing the work on a daily basis on yourself,
yes,
it can be easy. It doesn't mean it's going to flow perfectly all the time, but those bumps can be smaller and they can be less of a roller coaster dip.
And that mindset is so important to become resilient and to be confident. So thank you very much for talking with me today. How can people connect with you, Sharron?
Yeah, you can connect with me on my website, sharronkeogh.com, or through social media on Facebook and Instagram at the Sharron Keogh.
Great. And do you have a closing quote for us?
Oh, the way that I always say to people, from where I've come from in my background in health and safety, to, with what I do around health and wellness, is it's always about getting to the root cause. If we don't get to the root cause of an issue, all we're ever doing is treating the symptoms, or we're being reactive instead of being proactive. So getting to the heart of the issue will allow you to do the work to identify what you need to do moving forward and start living your life in a proactive way.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your time today. And I hope that our conversation will add value and insight to the audience. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.